Welcome to The Paradigm Shift on 4ZZZ 102.1, where we challenge the assumptions of our current society to resist oppression and investigate alternative ways of living, for a world based on justice, solidarity and sustainability. Welcome to The Paradigm Shift on 4ZZZ 102.1 FM. It's your local community independent radio station. My name's Andy and I will be on your airwaves for the next hour, broadcasting on Jagera and Turrbal country. And today on the show, we're going to do a Christmas special. In fact, we're going to be going straight to the source of where the Christmas story came from, which is Bethlehem in the occupied territories of Palestine. I spoke to Usama Nicola, who lives in Bethlehem, and we talked about what the significance of the Christmas story is for people there and how you might read it differently if you are living in that place currently under occupation. And of course, in the midst of a pretty terrible war that Palestinian people are seeing unfold. Not really a war, it's more one-sided than that. Islam himself calls it a genocide, and certainly it is a pretty imbalanced conflict. But there's lots of interesting things in this story, and I think that there's something that we can discover from hearing Usama talk about it. If you recall, we did have him on the Paradigm Shift maybe a couple of months ago at the beginning of the conflict, and I thought we'd touch back in. It is the time of year for talking about Bethlehem. Some might find it odd to do a Christmas show on the Paradigm Shift, and certainly, like many of you, I have mixed feelings about Christmas and sometimes can be a bit weary of the whole thing. If you step outside into the shops or advertisements or anything like that, what you see is more like capitalistmas than Christmas, and it certainly serves to entrench the kind of consumer society that we live in. But there's another Christmas story as well, and I think that's worth preserving, right? I think it's worth trying to hold on to Christmas meaning something beyond buying more stuff and more useless plastic trinkets, overindulging and whatever. I think, for one, it's just a point where the shops close, even though there's so much shopping around it. We get one break where we're meant to stop and rest and reflect, where we go talk to family. Maybe we go back to our hometowns and things like that and reflect on the places where we've come from as well. And it comes as well at the end of a year, which is also a good time for reflection. And so I think that's a valuable thing to have in our society that is all go, 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 and of course has so many demands on our attention. I also think that our culture is constantly under bombardment from kind of capitalist co-option, that anything that exists in our lives can be bought and sold, and we need to find things that are a part of our culture that are deeper than that, and these stories and rituals that we have as a part of the way that we relate to one another in this place, that aren't just about, either being bought and sold things or kind of being the passive recipient of stories told to entertain us, produced by the storytelling industry. And so Christmas, I think, and and other things that we can find in our culture are worth holding on to. Of course, before it was Christmas in the Northern Hemisphere, this celebration was also a winter solstice, which also, I guess, reflects on our relationship to the earth and noticing the way that our lives as humans, we don't just live our lives how we see fit, that actually we're somehow connected to this earth and its cycles, and that we should be paying attention to that as well. And so, the two aren't mutually exclusive. We can see that as part of the Christmas story as well. And what's more, when you look into it, actually, the Christmas story is kind of radical. We'll talk a bit with Dave Andrews, an interview I recorded a couple of years ago about Christmas at the end of this episode, to say, well, there's actually some pretty odd countercultural things in this kind of cultural archetype that we have here. And so that in itself is worthwhile as well, to say, well, this is where we've come from, but what is it in this story that has had such a grip on our culture for thousands of years now? And why is it that these kind of radical messages still hold on to this place? And what does it say about who we are and who we could be? And so for all these reasons, I think Christmas is worth marking in some way. And today we're going to do it by talking to Usama in Palestine. And before we go any further, actually, I think I might do a little short recap of what the original kind of Christmas story from the Bible is like, because actually probably a lot of people have never really heard it. Mostly our Christmas myths these days is about Santa and reindeer and things like that. And so I'll just give a quick sort of recap, including some of the bits that sometimes are easy to forget. So the story starts with Mary, a young woman. She's 2,000 years ago in what is now the West Bank of Palestine, and she is unmarried, which probably means she was a teenage girl, and she is visited by an angel and told that she is going to be divinely impregnated, which obviously is an uncommon occurrence, and Mary is a bit taken aback, but she does celebrate, and she writes, she sings this song that's reported in the Bible, which doesn't just talk about, how happy she is to have a baby, but also this idea that this baby will be a hope for a whole different way of society. And it does say that God scatters those who are proud, brings down rulers from their thrones, and lifts up the humble, fills the hungry with good things, and sends the rich away empty. And that this is somehow connected to the story of this baby that's to be born. Joseph, her fiancé, is understandably a little bit taken aback by the fact that his fiancé is pregnant now to somebody else, but he is a kind person, and so rather than publicly vilify her, he decides he's going to quietly divorce her, but he's visited in a dream by God, another uncommon occurrence, I guess, who says, no, the baby's from God, he'll be all good. And so Joseph goes for it. He takes that at its word and raises the child as his own. Now, another part of the story is that the Jews are under Roman occupation at the time, and as empires tend to do, they want to count how much wealth they have and how many people they control. And so in an early example of the surveillance state, they send everybody back to their hometown to all be numbered and kind of have their data taken down. And so Joseph and Mary, despite the fact that Mary's quite pregnant, are forced to, at that point, walk, possibly ride a donkey to Joseph's hometown of Bethlehem. And so they do that. Once they get there, they find out that there's no rooms anywhere to stay, no room at the inn, possibly because they were traveling slowly with a heavily pregnant woman, and possibly people didn't want a heavily pregnant, unmarried woman to be in their places of lodging. So anyway, the couple end up in the cattle shed, and the baby is born in the feed trough. As is often depicted amongst the livestock, possibly they did shoo out the animals before having the baby born. But it would not have been a very comfortable maternity ward either way. Now, nobody really comes to witness this except for a bunch of shepherds who are out working the night shift in the fields and are visited by angels and told to go and meet this baby, which they do as the kind of witnesses of this hopeful birth. And then later we get the story that some foreigners from the east have seen in the skies what the locals all nearby have not seen, that this significant baby's born. And so they travel to pay tribute to the new baby, but unfortunately tell the king at the time, who, like many kings, is a bit power-crazed and paranoid. And so his response to this is to kill all babies under the age of 2 who might be a threat to his reign. Pretty horrific infanticide in that story. And of course we've seen many conflicts around the world where children are often casualties. So Joseph and Mary head to Egypt as refugees, coincidentally the exact same route that many people are trying to take right now to get out of Gaza. And they discover along the way that being the hope of the world can be a bit of a rocky journey and a dangerous calling, as Jesus finds out later in his life. And there is a prophecy actually that they are given to say that as well as happiness, this will bring much sorrow, this story. So anyway, that's the story, the Christmas story, where we sit down and look at it. We're going to hear from somebody in Bethlehem who I spoke to this morning, Usama Nicola. Let's have a listen.
Hello everyone, this is Usama Nicola from Bethlehem. I'm a civil society activist and a local tour guide.
It's Christmas time here in Australia, which is the time of year when we talk about Bethlehem most of the time. It's not on any Australian's mind, and I guess for a lot of people here it seems like just this mythical place that's in this story. But you live in Bethlehem, and so I wonder what it's like for you when you read that Christmas story or hear it and having it set in your hometown.
For me, being born in Bethlehem, is very special. Bethlehem is the first location of the first Christmas. It's the location where the human rights teacher was born. And, he has been born for us. So when you read the Christmas story in the Bible and you walk the streets of Bethlehem all the way to the nativity place, you feel that you see and you imagine that story of Virgin Mary and Joseph coming from Nazareth to Bethlehem, walking the only street in that time in Bethlehem, which is today called Star Street, and we commemorate this happening and we do all our Christmas processions in that street. And it's called the Star Street because of the famous star in the Christmas story. The same streets that also the wise men who followed the star came to pay homage for Jesus and give him the gifts. So it's very special, it is really very special to be in Bethlehem, just some homes away from the Church of Nativity, this little town that's still little town. Sometimes we don't think about it, but for me it's a great deal to be in Bethlehem. This is why I am still staying in Bethlehem, and I don't want to leave Bethlehem because it means a lot.
You would get a lot of tourists there coming to Bethlehem. You work in the tourism industry yourself, and you would see Bethlehem, I guess, depicted in Western depictions of the Christmas story. How do you feel about the way that the West, who doesn't live there, sees your hometown?
I think everyone who think about the Christmas story try to adopt it in their culture, in their way of thinking. But even the tourists, when they come and visit Bethlehem and the holy sites, they forget the reality that, Jesus born under occupation, and we as Palestinians today live under occupation. And when Jesus was born under occupation, it became a symbol of liberation against any oppression. Jesus came for a message. Jesus came with a message that, it's not the politicians or the military leaders who are going to liberate us. It's the teaching of Jesus who shared with us through his parables. So if you really want to understand the Christmas story in the right way, you need to understand the culture of the land. You need to understand the circumstances that Mary has given birth under. This humble grotto that has been used for animals under the inn, this little inn in the little town of Bethlehem. Okay, so it was very humble place where this king, the King of Peace, became in flesh to talk to us, to give us the message directly and tell us what is the right way that or the right path that we need to take. But unfortunately, many people are still waiting for military leaders or political leaders to liberate them or create a better reality. But there will never be a better reality without Jesus, who teach us what we need to do and how we can do it through all his simple parables.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned there that the Christmas story takes place in occupied territory, and it begins with the Romans ordering the Jewish people at the time to move around, and this kind of restriction of people's freedom of movement. And of course, then there's the story of the tyrant Herod killing a lot of innocent children. Yeah, do you think that the story has a special relevance now compared to other times in history, maybe because the town of Bethlehem is once again an occupied territory?
The current situation in Bethlehem is deeply impacted by the ongoing Israeli occupation, the closure, the restricted of movement, the daily military incursions, the current aggression against the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank is, significantly affecting our daily lives. The travel restrictions and the closures and the checkpoints. We can't go to Jerusalem freely. People can't come to Bethlehem. Imagine this year we are having a sad Christmas. No lights, no Christmas festivals, no Christmas decoration, no Christmas tree. It's so sad to see Bethlehem dark because all the Christmas celebrations has been cancelled because of the ongoing humility and ongoing suffering and ongoing human suffering in Gaza, and also in less degree in the West Bank. So we're gonna go only for Christmas services at churches. There will be no scouts, there will be no drums, there will be no music, there will be no fireworks, lights, and Christmas trees. It's so sad. This Christmas Bethlehem is shrouded in a gloomy atmosphere. And this is so sad. For us, Christmas is the season of joy, is the season of hope, is the season of, we wait for this season because thousands of people will come. Last year we had 10,000 people participate in the Christmas tree lighting. We have almost similar number attending the different activities at the Christmas Eve. So Bethlehem was overcrowded. This year hotels are zero occupancy. We don't have tourists, we don't have pilgrimage, we don't have visitors. Even local visitors are not coming to Bethlehem this year because it's closed. Look up our reality. I see myself today as a Palestinian Christian. I am the Jewish of the ancient time. And the current Israeli occupation is the ancient Roman occupation. So it looked like no one has learned from history. and people didn't choose the right path for salvation, we can't continue in the same way. It's so sad to see how things are. The Holy Land must be a source of a blessing. That's what's supposed to be, the Holy Land today serves as a source of suffering and trauma rather than a blessing. It's enough and enough and enough. We need to be standing for humanity against any injustice, against any person. It's enough. If Jesus is here today, he will stand with the Palestinian. And it's so sad to see the number of children who has been killed. Almost 8,000 children has been killed in Gaza Strip. More than 6,000 women has been killed. 70% plus of the victims are children and women.
You mentioned there that Bethlehem is empty. There's no tourists or pilgrims coming this time, which there normally would be. What's the situation with the current war for Bethlehem, and how safe is it, and how have things changed?
I think Bethlehem has been always safe, despite all the challenges. The situation is very bad. Since the 7th of October, Bethlehem has been locked. We have checkpoints and roadblocks. Checkpoints are open for certain hours. For example, if I want to go to Ramallah, a different Palestinian city in the West Bank, or to Jericho or to Hebron, there is certain hours and from certain roads. It's not free. It's not freely movement. Roads will be blocked in the morning because the priority is for settlers to use roads. After the settlers move and go to work or to their places, roads will be open for Palestinian. So the level of the discrimination is very high. Like for example, if I want to go to Hebron, I need to leave after 8 o'clock and be back before 7 o'clock because the roads will be closed. It's open from 8 a.m. and closed at 7 p.m. And most of the time you will wait in a queue for 2 or 3 hours before you leave. So I have not been out of Bethlehem city since 7th of October because I'm not ready. I'm not ready to suffer in checkpoints. I just was talking with my kids and my wife today what we want to do for Christmas because our hearts is very heavy. We need to do something. We need to be away from the news and just be in a safe place. They say no, let's stay at home because that's the most safe place. Why shall we drive to Jericho, for example, and spend 3-4 hours in checkpoints and we are not secure if we can reach Jericho or not? So let's stay at home. So I have many friends from Nazareth and from Jerusalem who wish to be in Bethlehem at Christmas. They say, but we are not sure if we can leave back because checkpoints are closed. We have almost every day Israeli military raids and incursions. Last night we have a child 16 years old and around 20 Palestinians were injured in clashes with the Israeli military in southwest of Bethlehem in a village called Husan. But in the end, we care for people. We want people to come and feel safe. But people are not coming because they fear. And we forget always that Christmas is a message of no fear. And we want people to be with us today. The presence of the internationals will make a difference. Like my parents has small studios, they host visitors and pilgrimage. Every year around the Christmas time, the home is full. They use every corner in their home to host international people coming from all over the world. So every year during Christmas Eve, we have 20, sometimes more, visitors from different parts of the world and spend that night or 2 or 3 days with us around the Christmas time. So for us, it's a season of joy. It's a season of hope. It's a season of no fear. And for me and my children, Christmas is 365 days. Every day in the morning, we play the Christmas hymns in the car. in the way to school, in the way back from school, because it gives us hope, it gives us joy. Like we try to live the spirit of the Christmas around the year.
Yes, and it is a story of hope, the Christmas story. I guess hope is easy to find sometimes than others, and right now hope can be difficult to find if you live in Palestine. But does the Christmas story still bring hope?
Yes, Christmas is a time of hope, and for us there is no alternatives than hope. Where many people are losing hope and faith. Hope is our resistance and our resilience. Without hope, there is no meaning for our faith. As I mentioned earlier, that like Jesus came to show us the way, and now it's our responsibilities to follow and make the change and be the light and the salt, or just be used by the Satan. So Jesus loved us and loved everyone, and Jesus came just to tell us how God loves us. Love. Without love there is no hope, and without faith there is no hope. And yes, we will never give up hope. Hope is only what left for us. In the middle of all this darkness, in the middle of this dangerous situation, if we lose hope, we have lost everything.
For people in Australia who will be stopping to celebrate Christmas in the coming week, how do you hope that people remember you in Bethlehem and other people in the Holy Land as we stop to celebrate this story set in your hometown?
It's very important to remember that as Jesus suffered and the Holy Family suffered, there is still inhuman suffering in Palestine. And this suffering is because of the military occupation, which is illegal by international law. And this military occupation must end. And without international pressure, without collective responsibility, this occupation will never end. We deserve to live in peace. We deserve to live in reconciliation. We deserve to live in freedom. We wanna, just enjoy our life. So please keep us in your prayers, and not only prayers, but do some actions, reminding us of the struggle for freedom. We are yearning for peace. So, pray and act, send letters, do vigils, stand for humanity, stop this aggression, because what has been happening in Gaza is a real genocide. It's very important to stand for humanity and stand against any type of violence in this Holy Land. This Holy Land must be a Holy Land, and again a source of a blessing. So we need to be united for humanity. We need to be united for the message of Jesus. As Jesus' messages has been misguided many times. Jesus will never support war. Jesus will never support killing any human being in earth. Jesus has always stand with the weak and support the weak and love the weak. So if Jesus is here today, he will stand in the side of the Palestinian.
Thanks so much, Usama, for taking the time to talk to us.
God bless you, and hopefully the coming Christmas will bring peace, reconciliation, and end of the occupation. And we hope that there will be a better future and better year next year for everyone all over the world. God bless you.
Thanks very much, Usama. To Usama Nicola, who is living in the West Bank, Palestine, in Bethlehem, talking about what the Christmas story means to him there in the original setting, and what it means to all of us who this is somehow part of our culture, the Christmas story, how we might try to live it out and apply it to our lives. And of course, for many of us, that would mean trying to work for peace and freedom, which is what this kind of celebration is meant to be about. In the last part of the show, I'm going to play a bit of an interview I did with Dave Andrews, who is a local Brisbane theologian and spiritual thinker. And I talked to him a couple of years ago on a similar topic about the Christmas story and what it might mean for our times. And so let's hear from Dave. Well, Dave, as you're probably aware, it is Christmas coming up. What does Christmas mean to you personally?
Well, I think as a child, I was just really excited about getting presents. But I was brought up in a family where there was a strong faith tradition. And as I grew older, within that tradition, I became really disappointed about the way that Christ was displaced by what I saw as crassness rather than Christmas. And I was also disappointed the way St. Nicholas, who was really a radical bishop who was committed to working for the poor, had been co-opted by the Coca-Cola company and made as a figure for capitalist marketing at that time.
Yeah, it is such a mixed thing, isn't it? I mean, those rituals of family gatherings and the generosity of giving gifts are really important parts of our culture, but then it's also mixed with these consumer marketing pressures, and it does seem to get less and less to do with the original Jesus story every year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, the irony, of course, is that it was originally a pagan festival that celebrated the solstice that Christians tried to take over and then make it into a celebration of the birth of Christ. But what's happened over the years is that the pagan elements have re-emerged and triumphed over this attempt to co-opt Christmas for Christians and say, hey, no, we want to reclaim this festival as just a good time for merriment, and we're not so concerned about whether it's got some kind of association with a deeper meaning in terms of the Christian myth or not.
But yeah, at the heart of this festival, we do have this kind of cultural archetype of this Christian story of Joseph, Mary, and the baby Jesus. What do you think is the value of this story?
Well, the difficulty for me in that, Andy, is that this story has been so domesticated that the way we tell the story is often loses its radical significance. I mean, to start with, you've got Mary, who when she is preparing for the birth of her child, sings a song that most commentators say is one of the most revolutionary lyrics in human history. It's one that celebrates the overthrow of the system, the resurgence of the poor, who then claim the rights that have been denied by the rich. And that whole part of the message, which is leading up to the birth of Jesus, has kind of been deleted. But that's the framework, I think, in which we need to look at the story. And then, of course, in the story, you've got the birth of Jesus, who is incarnating something of the divine, but does it in really earthy, grounded ways that's a total contradiction of the divine right of kings. In fact, the king at the time, Herod, was totally threatened by the birth of this child, and as a result of that, sent out orders to slaughter all children under the age of 2. So you've got that awareness at the time that this coming of this child, Jesus, is truly revolutionary, is going to threaten the status quo, and the kings of the time are aware of that threat and unleash slaughter in order to try and stop it before it starts. And then, of course, you've got Jesus being taken by his mother Mary and father Joseph as refugees to Egypt to find safety during that time of that onslaught. And so you've got this incredibly ancient story that's incredibly relevant to our contemporary situation and all the dynamics of the issues that we face today.
Yeah, that's right. You've got these political themes that seem to be very relevant today. Refugees, as you say, and I guess the oppressive regimes of King Herod, and the status symbols of, where you're meant to be born. So we have these political themes in this story, but they seem to be buried not just in the kind of secular Santa Claus consumer story, but also in the Christian retelling of the story.
Oh, definitely. I think the way the story has been domesticated has actually taken the radical dimension out of this and softened it. It's like a soft-focused version of this that doesn't actually deal with the really challenging message in this. And I think Christians, by and large, have been content to be complicit with capitalism, and it's a cosy kind of relationship, and the church has been complicit with the state, and so the way that the story has been told has, I think, deliberately been told in a way that doesn't threaten the status quo.
So we've spoken about the Christmas story's domestication and its co-option by consumer marketing, but also about its radical heart. How do you think that we can reclaim this story to make it something useful in trying to create a better world?
For me, Andy, the story at the heart of it about the incarnation of God coming in this man, Jesus, is an incredibly radical story because it actually affirms the dignity of human beings in a way that's of extraordinary significance. And I think we need to reclaim that significance. The other thing is coming humbly in conditions of poverty rather than coming as a monarch in power and pomp and wealth affirms the dignity of ordinary people. That I think is a message that we really need to hold on to in a culture where marketing is driving us to be bigger and better and brighter than everybody else. And God's willingness to actually identify with those that are most marginalised and disadvantaged is one of the most significant messages of Christmas that I think we're called to remember.
Okay, thanks, Dave. That is Dave Andrews there talking about the significance of the Christmas story, and it is there, one of the stories in our culture. It has helped make who we are as a collective, and it's there for us to use, I guess, as well, to think about who we want to be. Maybe there's bits of it that we don't want to be, things like that, but I hope you do have a very enjoyable Christmas, and of course, as it blends into New Year, that time of celebration and reflection as well. Maybe it's been a bad year and you want to mourn the year that's been and put it to rest and get ready for the next one, and that's a worthwhile thing to do as well. But let's all take a little bit of time to try to make Christmas mean something and enjoy hanging out with the people that we love and showing them generosity as well. And we'll be back for another year, 2024. It'll be another year of challenges, of course, political, ecological, personal, economic. There'll be lots of work to do, and we'll need to be energized and inspired for it. And so hopefully this little season that we have can help us to do that. That's about all we have time for on The Paradigm Shift. See you next week.